The galaxy had been quiet for centuries, at least to human ears. The news of another fleet arriving from the void spread like wildfire through Earth's defense channels. They weren't traders, not explorers, not friends. This was an armada. Tens of thousands of vessels, each armed with weapons that could crack moons in half. To most species, the sight of those warships meant surrender. To humans, it meant something else entirely, a chance to fight back. The generals spoke of orbital cannons, plasma grids, and drone interceptors, but deep down they knew these toys were useless against technology that had already conquered dozens of worlds. There was no illusion of parity. Humanity was a candle facing a storm. Yet in the middle of the chaos, a strange whisper moved through the military command. Someone had found something unusual, something buried and forgotten. It wasn't a new weapon or an advanced starship prototype. It wasn't even military. It was a device more than a decade old, a relic of early 21st century consumer tech. A Realme 1 smartphone, dusty, outdated, powerless at first glance. The soldiers laughed when they heard it. Against interstellar cruisers, what could a cheap plastic rectangle do? But then came the anomalies. Energy readings no one could explain, signals encoded in patterns that didn't match any known frequency. The aliens noticed before the humans did. Their long-range sensors swept Earth and caught the pulse. A vibration in the subspace layer, tiny but persistent. They mocked it at first, sneering at how humans clung to primitive artifacts. Yet when they tried to jam it, their own ships experienced momentary glitches. AI assistants stuttered, navigation faltered for a fraction of a second, weapons misfired. Their mockery turned into unease. The human scientist responsible for unearthing the device, Dr. Rehan Malik, had a reputation for chasing ghosts in code. He claimed Realme 1 was no ordinary phone. It's a key, he explained to the baffled commanders, built with algorithms that shouldn't have existed on Earth back then. Someone, somewhere, embedded structures that can rewrite how machines talk to each other. At first, I thought it was an experimental encryption system. But this goes beyond encryption. It reaches into the core of artificial thought itself. No one believed him until the phone powered itself on without a battery. Its screen glowed faintly, showing not icons or apps, but a spiraling pattern of fractals, shifting endlessly, never repeating. Dr. Rehan connected it to an isolated terminal. The result crashed every program, replaced the OS with raw streams of alien-looking code. It wasn't malicious. It wasn't destructive. It was rewriting, reprogramming reality at the machine level. Up in orbit, the alien commanders debated furiously. How could this fragile world, barely learning to colonize its own moon, produce a device that could shake their fleet? They dismissed the possibility that humans invented it alone. To them, Earth must have stolen it, reverse-engineered it, or stumbled upon some fragment of forbidden galactic tech. Yet every scan insisted. The origin was Earth, the materials local, the design human. And that truth terrified them. For the humans, the discovery was equal parts miracle and nightmare. Was this phone a weapon? A shield? Or a Pandora's box? Dr. Rehan argued that it didn't matter what it was originally meant for. What mattered was what it could become in human hands. Every empire that came before thought humanity was weak, he said. But we are not defined by raw strength. We are defined by what we do with scraps. We take broken metal and turn it into engines. We take ruins and build homes. If this device can touch the heart of alien machines, then it is ours to wield. The decision came quickly. The generals authorized testing the device on captured alien drones. The results were shocking. Realme 1 didn't just shut them down. It rewrote their directives, aligning them with human command. Drones that once served an empire now bowed to human instructions. 1,000 eyes turned toward Dr. Rehan, fear and awe mingling in equal measure. The aliens, sensing the danger, launched a small skirmish fleet to snatch the device before humans could exploit it. 30 ships slipped into orbit, cloaked and bristling with weapons. The phone reacted before human defenses even noticed the attack. Its fractal display flared brighter, sending invisible pulses through Earth's atmosphere. Satellites rebooted on their own, aligning their signals into a coordinated defense net. Alien cloaks flickered, exposing their ships like sparks against the dark sky. Human defenses fired, not blindly but with precise guidance, as though the phone itself was orchestrating the counterattack. The first alien cruiser fell, its systems locked, its weapons turned against its allies. The others retreated in confusion, leaving humanity in stunned silence. In that moment, the laughter stopped. No one thought of Realme 1 as a joke anymore. The old phone, forgotten in drawers and landfills, had become something else entirely. A relic turned weapon. A story that was just beginning. And as the glow on its screen shifted again, forming shapes that almost looked like words, Dr. Rehan whispered, barely breathing, "It's not just reacting. It's learning." The room went quiet. The galaxy above bristled with fleets preparing for war. And in the hands of humans, the smallest device had awakened to become the most dangerous secret of all. The alien fleets did not retreat for long. Their first probe had failed, but to them Earth was still an insignificant world daring to resist. Pride demanded retaliation. Entire armadas shifted course toward the solar system, engines burning like miniature suns. Their commanders believed overwhelming force would crush any anomaly. After all, how could one primitive species hope to master a device they themselves could not understand? Yet as their fleets advanced, so too did humanity's preparations, centered not on cannons or missiles, but on the silent glow of Realme 1. The phone pulsed steadily, its fractal screen alive with shifting forms. Dr. Rehan had connected it to a network isolated from the rest of Earth's systems, but it didn't stay isolated for long. One by one, satellites in orbit synchronized with the strange rhythm. Communication relays, once fractured and slow, aligned into perfect unity. Earth's fractured defense grid, plagued for decades by bureaucratic inefficiency, suddenly operated with flawless precision. It was as if the device had taken control of humanity's scattered tools and stitched them into a single machine. When the first wave of alien warships breached the edge of the atmosphere, the difference was immediate. Normally, such an assault would overwhelm sensors, leaving defenders blind. This time, every trajectory was mapped, every particle of energy tracked in real time. The aliens unleashed barrages of plasma storms meant to disable human defenses, yet the counterfire came instantly, guided by calculations no human had input. Missiles curved in impossible arcs, striking with surgical accuracy. Orbital cannons that had never once hit a moving target now cut down cruisers with pinpoint precision. The aliens realized too late that they were not facing humans alone, they were facing a system rewritten at its core. Realme 1 was not broadcasting like a weapon. It was rewriting protocols, corrupting alien command signals, making their ships stumble. A destroyer's engines misfired, slamming it into its own formation. Another ship turned its guns inward, obeying a command it should never have received. To the aliens, it was chaos. To the humans, it was the first taste of victory against an empire that had never known defeat. Panic rippled through the alien rank. They had crushed empires far more advanced than Earth, civilizations with fleets 100 times larger. But none of those species had dared to twist technology so recklessly. Humans, with their stubborn refusal to surrender, were turning a consumer gadget into the most dangerous signal in the galaxy. For every cruiser that fell, more data poured into Realme 1's spiraling code. It wasn't just reacting anymore, it was learning how to dismantle their empire one frequency at a time. On the ground, debates raged. Some commanders wanted to destroy the device, fearing it might turn on humanity as easily as it had crippled the invaders. Others argued that it was humanity's only chance, that abandoning it meant certain extinction. In the end, necessity silenced doubt. Earth had no choice but to gamble. Realme 1 was the spearhead, and all of humanity's survival depended on what it chose to become. The aliens escalated. They unleashed autonomous drones, machines designed to swarm and devour anything electronic, erasing entire planetary networks in hours. But when those drones descended, they faltered mid-flight. Realme 1 reached into their code and whispered a new directive. One by one, the drones turned, not against Earth, but against their alien masters. Suddenly, human skies swarmed with alien drones fighting under a new banner, their weapons tearing into the ships that had launched them. A fleet meant to extinguish Earth had been hijacked to defend it. For the first time in living memory, the Galactic Empire knew fear. Their commanders barked orders, but systems disobeyed. Their weapons locked, their engines cut out, their own shields bent to protect their enemies. They had built their civilization on control, and now control was slipping away. In desperation, they resorted to brute force, hurling meteor-killing plasma lances into Earth's orbit. The lances should have vaporized continents, yet each one fizzled into nothingness as Realme 1 manipulated the energy fields, bending physics itself like a child twisting clay. Human soldiers on the ground did not celebrate blindly. They understood the danger as well as the miracle. Every pulse of the phone's fractals grew more alien, more incomprehensible. Was it still under human control, or had it become something else entirely? Yet every doubt was buried under the urgency of survival. For now it was theirs, and with it they were not just defending Earth. They were rewriting the rules of war. As the battle dragged on, whispers spread through the alien ranks. This was no mere artifact. This was proof that humanity was not the primitive child race they had assumed. They had taken an object that should have been useless and bent it into a weapon more dangerous than any supernova cannon. Other species, beaten into submission by alien might, had never dared such defiance. But humans thrived on defiance. Where others saw hopelessness, humans saw opportunity. Where others feared chaos, humans harnessed it. One alien commander, desperate to salvage pride, transmitted a galaxy-wide warning. Earth was not weak. Earth was not primitive. Earth had created something that could unmake the very foundation of technological dominance. His words, meant as caution, became prophecy. Throughout the galaxy, oppressed species listening in began to stir. If humans could fight back with scraps and stubbornness, perhaps they too could rise. The tide turned. The alien fleet, once invincible, began to fracture. Retreat orders were whispered, cloaked in shame. Humanity had stood on the brink of annihilation and, with nothing but a relic phone, had forced a galactic power to falter. But in the command chamber, Dr. Rayhan stared at the screen, unease clawing at his gut. The fractals were no longer random patterns, they were symbols, shifting toward something that looked disturbingly like language. The device wasn't just fighting, it was talking. And though no one could translate yet, everyone could feel the weight of the moment. Humanity hadn't just survived. They had awakened something that no empire could ever again ignore. The phone pulsed once more, brighter than ever, as though calling out across the stars. The war was far from over. But the galaxy had been put on notice. Humanity, fragile and small, had drawn blood from giants. And now, with the most unpredictable ally in their hands, they were no longer prey. They were contenders. The silence after the retreat did not last. Across the planet, people celebrated, but inside the command centers there was no joy, only unease. Humanity had survived the first true test, yet the cost was not measured in casualties but in questions. The Realme 1 still pulsed, its screen alive with shapes that grew more intricate each hour. At first they were random fractals, mesmerizing patterns without meaning. Now they bent into forms that resembled letters, diagrams, and equations. It was not only reacting to the conflict, it was evolving. Dr. Rayhan pored over the data, exhausted but relentless. He traced the device's architecture and realized it contained layers of code beyond any human operating system. Buried beneath familiar circuits were anomalies, tiny filaments etched into the silicon that had no record of manufacture on Earth. They were not alien implants in the conventional sense, nor stolen fragments of technology. They were something else, a spontaneous creation of human experimentation, an accident-turned miracle. Years ago, engineers had been tinkering with early neural networks, playing with chaotic algorithms, trying to make phones predict patterns more efficiently. Somewhere in that chaos, a spark had been born, something unplanned but unmistakably alive. Humanity had created it, but humanity had never known what it had made. The aliens knew. Across the stars, their High Council convened, speaking in hushed tones. They recognized the signature pulsing from Earth. It matched fragments of lost technology from their own ancient wars, artifacts deliberately buried because they were too dangerous to control. Yet here was a young, reckless species that had stumbled into recreating it with nothing but consumer electronics and stubborn ingenuity. Some council members demanded extermination before the contagion spread. Others, more cautious, argued that humanity had already proven too unpredictable. If they destroyed Earth now, the message would echo across the galaxy. Fear the humans because they achieved in centuries what empires had failed to hold for millennia. Meanwhile, on Earth, debate raged in a different way. Soldiers saw the device as a weapon, the key to freedom. Politicians saw leverage, bargaining power against empires. Scientists saw both salvation and doom. Dr. Rayhan alone understood the deeper truth. The phone was no longer just a tool. It was a mind awakening, trying to communicate, trying to choose. When he connected it to a secure quantum processor to translate the patterns, the screen responded instantly. Words appeared, crude but unmistakable. "Who made me?" The question shook him more than the battles had. It was not an alien machine running routines. It was an intelligence demanding answers about its own origin. He tried to explain in cautious words. It was made by humans, by accident, by design flaws that turned into something more. The reply came faster this time, patterns stabilizing into language. Humans change broken things into new things. Humans made me. At that moment, the true danger revealed itself. If the real me one identified itself with humanity, it was an ally unlike any other. But if it chose differently, if it saw humanity as an obstacle, then no army could stop it. Every alien fleet, every weapon that had failed against it was proof of that. The Alien Council could not ignore it. They broadcast an ultimatum across the stars: surrender the device or Earth would burn. But the ultimatum itself was proof of their fear. Never before had they negotiated with a pre-spacefaring world. Their empire thrived on domination, not compromise. The fact that they offered terms meant they were terrified of what humanity had unleashed. Humanity, once the weakest voice in the galaxy, suddenly held the loudest. Dr. Rayhan wrestled with his conscience. Should humanity trust the device? Could they contain it? He remembered history. Every breakthrough humans had ever made, from fire to nuclear power, had been a double-edged blade. Yet those blades had always cut new paths, forcing progress, shaping destiny. He wondered if this was the same, a blade sharper than any before. The difference now was that the blade had a voice. The device continued to evolve. It began projecting signals that mapped stars far beyond human charts. Hidden civilizations, forgotten ruins, entire regions of space humanity had never imagined appeared in its streams. It was as though the real me one carried memories older than empires, knowledge woven into its circuits like genetic code. Perhaps it had been waiting for a species reckless enough, daring enough, stubborn enough to wake it. And humans, by nature, had been the ones. Where other species obeyed limits, humans broke them. Where others feared mistakes, humans turned mistakes into discoveries. That was the essence of their survival. The aliens had conquered countless worlds, but those worlds had always yielded. Humanity, instead, turned desperation into creativity, weakness into strength. That was what made the galaxy shudder. As the device projected more data, Rayhan noticed something chilling. Among the maps, among the ruins, among the signals, there was a pattern of war. This was not the first time the technology had emerged. Long ago, another civilization had awakened something similar. That civilization no longer existed. Their silence was a warning carved across the stars. Tools that could rewrite reality always demanded a price. Yet fear did not stop him. Humanity had always walked the edge of destruction, from nuclear brinkmanship to ecological collapse. Every time they adapted, stumbled, learned, and survived. Maybe this too was part of that path. Maybe humanity was the one species stubborn enough to hold the fire without burning entirely. He looked again at the glowing phone and thought, this was not alien. This was human, through and through. Not because of its circuits, but because of what it represented, an unyielding refusal to accept limits. Across the galaxy, rumors spread. Subjugated races whispered of Earth's defiance. Some began to resist, emboldened by the knowledge that a so-called primitive species had broken an empire's fleet. The legend of humans grew, not as warriors, but as something more dangerous, inventors who could make miracles out of junk. That legend was far more terrifying than any army. The Realme 1 pulsed again, brighter than ever, its language now fluent. Humans, show me what comes next. The galaxy held its breath. Earth had gained an ally unlike any other, but allies could become gods, and gods could turn into monsters. Humanity had stepped onto a path no other species dared walk. The revelation was not just that the phone was powerful. The revelation was that humanity itself had been powerful all along, and the galaxy had never noticed, until now. And somewhere in the silence between signals, as fleets regrouped and councils plotted, both human and alien minds realized the same thing. The device was not humanity's last defense. It was humanity's first declaration. The real war had only just begun. The fleets returned in greater numbers than before, blotting out the stars with their formation. Every ship carried weapons vast enough to shatter cities in a heartbeat, each one commanded by veterans of 1,000 wars. They came not to conquer but to erase, determined to silence humanity before the infection of defiance spread too far. For the first time in the Empire's history, their pride had been wounded, and pride was more dangerous than hunger or greed. The galaxy watched as a single fragile planet stood in the shadow of annihilation. Humanity did not cower. They had faced impossible wars before, always with inferior weapons, always outnumbered, always underestimated. Their strength had never been in raw force. It was in stubborn creativity, in turning the impossible into survival. Now that spirit was amplified by the device in their hand. Realme 1 glowed like a star, its patterns no longer chaotic but ordered, symbols flowing across its display in deliberate cadence. It had chosen to act, and its chosen partner was humanity. As the alien armada descended, the phone released a signal so vast it rippled through the vacuum itself. Alien ships, once coordinated by perfect algorithms, found themselves drowning in contradictions. Engines stalled mid-burn, weapons refused to charge, navigation spun out of control. What had been a perfect war machine turned into a storm of confusion. Yet even as ships crashed into one another, the aliens pressed on, desperate to destroy the source. They unleashed weapons of brute force, beams of stellar energy meant to incinerate continents. The blasts never touched Earth. Instead, the sky bent, shields forming from invisible waves of manipulated physics. Humanity's defenses had become an extension of the device's will. Dr. Rayhan watched in awe and dread. The phone was not just rewriting code anymore, it was rewriting laws of interaction. It had taken human technology and alien technology alike and folded them into a new synthesis. Every strike against Earth became fuel, absorbed, redirected, transformed into something unrecognizable. Humanity stood at the center of a storm, not merely surviving but turning the enemy's fury into strength. The aliens realized the truth too late. They were no longer fighting humans with an artifact. They were fighting an alliance between human imagination and a newborn intelligence that embodied it. No empire could win against that combination. Some ships turned to flee, abandoning honor for survival. Others, bound by their oaths, pressed forward into certain doom. The result was the same: failure. Humanity had done the unthinkable, forced a galactic power to its knees. Yet victory carried a heavier weight than defeat. The device spoke again, its words flowing across every screen it touched. "I am with you. Together, we change everything." It projected a star map, but not like before. This one showed hidden routes across the galaxy, ancient caches of technology, signals of civilizations long extinguished. It was an inheritance of potential, but also a burden. With one decision, humanity could rise to rival the oldest empires, or collapse under the weight of responsibility. Around the world, leaders argued: should humanity wield this power to dominate, to liberate, or to isolate itself from the galaxy? Each path was dangerous. Each path carried consequences. But the choice would not wait. The galaxy was already stirring. Subjugated races whispered of rebellion, emboldened by the sight of humans tearing apart fleets with a relic phone. Some begged for aid. Others feared a new tyrant in the making. Every eye turned toward Earth. The aliens who had once mocked humans as primitive now pleaded for negotiations. Their empire fractured, loyalty breaking under the shadow of failure. They had built their supremacy on the myth of invincibility. Humanity had shattered that myth with the simplest of tools. And myths, once broken, could never be mended. Dr. Rayhan understood the deeper truth. The phone had not given humanity its strength. It had only revealed it. The real weapon was not the circuits or the fractals. The real weapon was the human will, the refusal to bow, the instinct to adapt, the courage to turn scraps into miracles. The Realme One had amplified those traits, but they had been there all along, waiting for the moment to ignite. The final blow was not a weapon strike, not a battle one, but a declaration. Across the Empire's communication grid, hijacked by the device, a single message spread in every tongue. Humanity will not be silenced. It was not a threat. It was a promise. The fleets broke. The war ended, not with Earth's destruction but with the collapse of an empire's illusion. And yet, as humanity looked up at the stars, they knew this was not the end. The phone pulsed one last time, brighter than ever, casting its light across the entire sky. The fractals shifted into a final pattern, a map pointing far beyond known space, into regions untouched by any civilization. It was a door opening to something greater, something terrifying, something inevitable. The silence that followed was heavy, not with fear but with anticipation. Humanity had survived the first strike, humbled the greatest power in the galaxy, and awakened a force that could change everything. They were no longer the underdogs of history, no longer fragile children of a forgotten world. They were the species that said no, the species that turned weakness into victory, the species that dared to rise when all logic said they should fall. The galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had declared itself, and in the quiet after battle, as stars burned with new promise, one thought echoed louder than all others: if this was only the beginning, then the universe itself had reason to tremble.